There are roles in every company. There are people in every company that set the example, set the culture. But the engineering managers and product are usually at the forefront because it's their role to make decisions.
Hi, I'm your host, Magali Pellissier, and I'm a product manager. Welcome to Product Perspectives, the podcast for product people that gives a voice to their stakeholders. Each week, I show you the other side of a product. I interview the people who contribute to making products a success. They are engineers, writers, marketers, support analysts, UX designers, or even salespeople. Not only will I give them the credit they deserve, but will uncover what makes a good product and a good product manager from their perspective. Stakeholders management is a key skill for product managers. So just as you are obsessed with listening to your customers, let's hear from your stakeholders. My guest today is Edvard Dvorak. Eddie is a senior engineering manager at Anaplan, a business planning software company founded in Yorkshire, in England, and now headquartered in San Francisco. Eddie is responsible for 4 engineering teams that form a value stream focusing on data interactions. He has been in engineering for over 20 years and has worked across different skills and stacks. Thank you very much, Eddie, for joining me today. It's very exciting. It's our first podcast, so thank you for being the first guest.
Pleasure to be here, Magali.
You've been working in engineering for 20 years. I was about to ask you if you've always wanted to do this when you were a kid, but I see that you've done a university degree in physics, so probably not. What did you want to do when you were a kid?
In reality, I wanted to work either with medicine or with space. I opted for physics with medical technology, did a master's. Eventually, I went to do a PhD. The PhD turned out to be more software engineering than image processing and working with medical machinery. And that's where I learned how to write software. As it progressed, I found the puzzle pieces of working with software were really interesting, and I went into software.
So how did you move into software? How did you learn about it?
At the time, 20 years ago, when I learned, the internet was in fledgling state. You didn't have as many websites. So it was literally a book. And the book that I learned from was Koenig and Ritchie, Programming C Language, which is more of a pamphlet than a book these days. It goes through the very basics of software engineering. And I sat down in front of a machine with a compiler, and it was a Unix terminal, I believe.
How long did that take you to learn the C language then?
The basics of C language, they might seem narrow at the moment. There's a couple of loops. There was no object orientation at that point in time. It took a couple of weeks to, let's say, learn it, but it took a long time to get proficient at it. You never really reach the top of the proficiency. The world of software engineering keeps moving. You keep solving newer problems. So you're constantly learning. I wouldn't say that I've finished learning yet.
Okay, so 20 years ago, you learned thanks to a book. How do you learn now? What resources do you use?
I personally learn really well by doing the exercises. So I like to do Hello World. I like to do problems that aren't on a critical path where I can play around a little bit. A few minutes after that, I usually get bored with them and I jump onto the critical path and start actually delivering. I have been on courses which are classroom learning. The benefit there is that you have a nice protected period of time. At the moment, with working from home, if you're learning on the same laptop that you're working on, you get lots of notifications. Work is always present. So getting an amount of time in which you can learn is really difficult.
I can tell on your LinkedIn profile, you're doing lots of LinkedIn courses about management and how to help your team develop. What's your goal with that?
So I started in software engineering behind the computer, writing code. But over the past 20 years, software engineering's changed from a game where you as an individual developer can know majority of your stack and actually deliver it. You as a one person can have fairly good velocity, to a world where the stack on which you're delivering is very wide. You have the front end, you have the back end, database, Kubernetes, deployment. Moving into that area has really made me appreciate collaboration and how people work together. My strength does lie more with people than with just myself. As people came to me for more and more help, I decided to get better at it. So I found courses which strengthened my decision making, which strengthened my ability to help people. It didn't just strengthen it. I think I really like to understand the reasons why I'm doing something. So actually, quite a lot of them explained to me why I was leaning towards a certain solution, why I was approaching problems in a certain way. And that kind of knowledge of how I work with people, how I solve problems, can also help me when I can't solve a problem. I can go through the analysis of, well, have I done all of the steps that I normally do? Have I missed something? Have I missed a decision point? Have I overanalyzed something or underanalyzed something? Have I spoken incorrectly? Have I transferred my information correctly? It's basically taking the guesswork out of it, hopefully making me better in my job helping other people. The first step of creating a shared understanding is having some shared experience.
But asking why, it resonates a lot with me as a product manager, because I hear a lot of, oh, can you do this? Can you add this feature to the product? And I think starting with why do you need this? What do you want to do with it? It's probably the reason why we worked well together, is because we were aligned on that start with why question.
Definitely. I think understanding the why is sometimes more important. If you just accept the solution that is provided, you can deliver it exactly word for word. But if you're relying on them transferring the information properly, a lot of the stuff that we do, a lot of the notes that we make, the tickets that we create, they're all really just points for conversation. And if you dedicate yourself a little bit and you have that conversation and you understand what problem they're trying to solve, you will be able to solve it for them better than they expected it with their solution. So understanding why is really crucial.
Yeah, so you mentioned that it's very useful for the engineering team basically to understand the why and to have that empathy with the users to then come up with the best solution. And you talked a lot about being a manager and that it is your role as well to help this team succeed. So how do you create that shared understanding across the engineers in your team so they know what to build and what's the best way to build it?
That's a really interesting question, because the first step of creating a shared understanding is having some shared experience. Working on a same project will give you that, but it may take some time. You may go through some difficult periods. So what I usually like to do is have non-work related events that give people a shared common experience. Anaplan has hackathons where you, for a day, find a problem and you try and build it. They're great because you're not on a critical path and you're just basically spending the time working together, learning about each other. Games, books, workshops, all of these things help build common understanding. I also run some workshops on how people like to communicate so that we can tilt towards each other and actually understand that transferring information doesn't mean you just say it. The delivery needs to be just so that the people understand it as well. There is a bit of effort in that. There's a bit of effort in making sure that things happen with enough time to give people enough thought process, enough time to think about it. Person A might take a week to process this chunk of information, and person B might take 2 days. If we want a good result, we really need to start talking about it maybe a week in advance to give everybody a chance to process the information. For whatever reason, they might be just busier, they might not have as much experience.
So you've mentioned adapting the way you talk to people, because it's not only what you're talking about, it's how you're presenting the information. And doing some workshops to understand how the different types of personalities. What's your personality type?
I really like emotions and the data. So why is important. And I always consider the impact of information on people. Although I really have strong empathy towards introverts as well. Actually, at home, I'm more of an introvert. I recharge my batteries by reading, by walking in the woods. Whereas at work, I become much more open and engaged.
You have a lot of energy and I think that capacity of bringing people together.
That's one of the roles of an engineering manager, is to lead by example. If you turn up with low energy, with lack of enthusiasm, with inability to find the solution, you're not going to inspire people around you. People around you are going to see and go, well, if Eddie's like this, it's fine for me. Same for solutions. And if Eddie checks in bad code, it's okay for me. You really set the example. It's not just engineering managers. There are roles in every company. There are people in every company that set the example, set the culture. But the engineering managers and product are usually at the forefront because it's their role to make decisions. This is a difference between a big A agile and little a agile. Being agile and following agile are two different things.
When I think of the Agile ceremonies, it can become quite repetitive. Every day, stand up, every week, you've got refinement. And especially when we're working from home now, how do you keep that engagement in the team during those Agile ceremonies?
I try not to focus on the Agile ceremonies too much, for the simple reason that if you take Scrum and if you take a sprint, which let's say you have a backlog refinement, people are going to turn up. Some people may be ready mentally for it. Some people may not be. So actually, the value of that meeting for an hour at a specific time is fairly reduced. The thing that I've been championing a lot, which has worked for this team, is to not focus on that meeting by itself. Refinement should happen when it needs to happen. So you could have 2 meetings, 3 meetings in a week if you're refining something big and you don't have the information. As long as you've prepared the team for it and given them enough mental preparation time, you could have a day's worth of workshop. Using all of these different tools, different types of workshop, different focuses, alleviate the mundaneness of it's a Tuesday afternoon, it's backlog refinement time. So I try to use the backlog refinement time to work with product, to prioritize things, to triage issues, to discuss some of the smaller pieces, and then basically get ready for the next sprint. But actual backlog refinement, the breaking down of bigger stories is almost always outside of that meeting whenever you are ready for it. So it may be the sprint before, it may be 2 sprints before, but not in the same sprint.
I think that's a sort of a difference between doing Agile, which is basically just following the book, and being Agile in practice, where you find whatever works for your team, and it depends on the people as well you have in your team.
Yeah, this is a big difference between a big A agile and little a agile. Being agile and following agile are two different things. And we have to remember that our job is to produce features and software for our customers as quickly and as efficiently and as with the highest quality that we can. Whatever we need to do to achieve that should be considered. People are the process.
What's very interesting is I do believe that your statement is right. So your job is that. My job is not to do that. My job as a product manager is to solve customers' problems. Once we figure out the solution, then your job is to deliver it as quickly, as efficiently, and with high quality. There's a very bad difference that I see between like what I do as a product manager and what you do as an engineering manager. Do you agree?
Interesting. I see it slightly differently. Yes, the product manager is the face of customers. Job of the product manager is to bring a single unified story to work with the engineers. I don't think that product can find the correct solution without engineering in the same way that the engineering cannot find the correct solution without product. We need the 2 teams working together. I've always used the analogy of you guys are the hot air balloon that flies really high and we're the anchor that anchors you to the ground so that we can go on the same height as we should do.
Do you mean you anchor me to the ground by saying, no, it's not feasible? Or it's going to take 3 months to develop?
That has happened. Yes, that has happened. Yes.
I mean, your analogy is very good. And I would say above me, above a product manager in that kind of like race to the sky, there's also the UX design team come up with a lot of big ideas, which is awesome because we need that kind of big idea thinking, but it's finding that balance with the UX team. So we need to work on an MVP. Yes, we don't want to sacrifice the user experience, but we need to be realistic here with what we can do in the short term as well.
Yeah, exactly.
In this podcast, I also welcome some people who have questions for you. So I've talked to Joanna. She works at Anaplan as a product manager, and she has a question for you. So let's hear from her.
Hey, Eddie, it's Joanna. A question I wanted to ask you is, what's the best way product managers can share user feedback with engineers?
That's a very personal question in a way. Every engineer is different. I'm quite happy to go into meetings with customers. I know also of many people who joined engineering because they prefer computers. They prefer writing code. Playing to the strengths of your team is the only thing you can do. You're not going to change people. That's not their forte. Their forte is code. So you're not going to change them. So why try? It's just going to bring hardship to them. It's going to bring hardship to you. Use the people that have strengths. If you have a lot of those kind of people in, then you're going to have to work a little bit harder yourself. And actually, I'd scheduled a meeting with a customer earlier so that you have more time to post-process the information and provide it to the team. And I'd work with the team to effectively nail the questions that you're going to ask the customer so that you have a very guided meeting. I'd set a half an hour meeting with the customer specifically to answer a question or two. And that's it. A series of those will give you information to take it to the team. I protect my team. The Scrum Master protects my team. The product protects my team.
So you say you're an engineering manager, but you've actually been promoted recently. So congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
How does this change your role and your interaction with product now that you have 4 teams to look after and they all have different products?
The way I see it, the role of an engineering manager is to work with people, help them learn, make sure that they're happy, make sure that they have the skills that they need to perform the jobs that they're doing. Look at the roadmap and look at the kind of what's coming and make sure that's being decomposed into correct size pieces that is scheduled correctly. So stepping up to be a senior manager, I'm still doing a lot of that, but it's at a higher scale. I am still looking at the roadmap, and the time scale is no longer in the next couple of months. It's more to do with a year, and there are more pieces in it. We're tackling projects across teams. I'm still looking at people. I'm still making sure that people are happy, that they have the same skill sets, but it's more teams, more skill sets. And I'm also no longer coaching and mentoring people on how to code, but I'm coaching and mentoring people on how to coach and mentor people as well. Being a senior engineering manager is proving to be a lot of fun.
Well, I really like the fact that you say it's a lot of fun, because sometimes the problems we're dealing with are very complex. It can be big customer problems. Some customers make a lot of noise, and that's creating a bit of disruption, and there's a tendency to change the roadmap. It can be technical debt, dependencies with other teams. So can you give me some examples of big problems like this that you've got that are disrupting your team, and it's your role to help unblock the situation?
A lot of the things that you mentioned are just new information. It's just pieces of the puzzle. You wake up every day and you don't know what the day is going to bring. Whatever happened yesterday doesn't matter. I really believe that all of us that come to work come and do our best with the information that we have at the time. Therefore, today when I wake up, I'm going to look at these problems. I've got new information. Well, what's the best solution with this information? It doesn't matter that I made a different decision yesterday. It doesn't matter why things have changed, except from the point of view that if it's a problem that could be fixed, it should be fixed. I wouldn't call them disruptions. I think that's just part of work. The big one at the moment that we're dealing with, I can't tell you the exact details of it yet, but we're working on a product that we're about to launch. And we've effectively separated it into 6 or 7 stages of delivery. couple of the stages. We've practically worked on the stages 1, 2, and 3, and we understand exactly what we need to do for stages 1, 2, and 3. But stages 4 through to 7, we don't know in which order to put them in. And we had them in order 4, 5, 6, 7. And after the most recent engagement, out of the blue, it seems that the sentiment has changed both externally and internally to be 4, 6, 5, 7. That's the information that we're working with today. So.
And that's what Agile is about. I mean, not reworking all the time what you've done, but evolving as you've learned some new elements. We often talk about product managers having to almost protect the team. So they're kind of a barrier between everybody asking lots of features, gonna have the sales team pushing for this, lots of requests, and they're filtering this information. What do you think of this view of product protecting the engineering team?
It's a term I've heard a lot. I do think it's accurate. I protect my team, the Scrum Master protects my team, and the product protects my team. And the reason why we say protect is that usually the developers working on a team, the engineers working on a team, they will always try and find a solution for your problem. That's why they're there. They love finding solutions to the problem. But chopping and changing contexts, tasks, subjects costs a lot of energy. The last figures that I read were something like every context switch takes about 40 minutes to recover from. Even if a Slack goes off, it takes a lot of effort for an engineer to pick it back up. They hold a lot of invisible strings in their head that they're trying to connect through. So you're protecting their time, you're protecting their effort. But at the same time as protecting them, it's helping them find the correct solution. Again, if I asked the customers what they wanted, they would have just said faster horse.
Cool. So before Anaplan, you've worked in other engineering roles, and these were in smaller companies. What do you think makes the biggest difference between a small and a big company when you work in engineering, and which one do you prefer?
Once you get beyond a certain size, you're really, working with a certain amount of people. Usually smaller companies can act faster. They don't have to go through certain steps that a larger company has. So, for example, their delivery system might be smaller because they only have 2 or 3 teams that deliver. So they can do it from a single server, whereas 40, 50 teams delivering need a better system. So the supporting infrastructure grows. But in a way, I think every company goes through those stages of growth, and that's what you want. There isn't a better company to work for. They both are you working with people, and it's down to you to make it good. So it's down to you to be adaptable. It's down to you to adjust to what is needed to a certain degree, obviously. So personally, I would say size is irrelevant. I think culture and ethics are relevant. People before process.
I have this little game. So I'm going to propose you 2 options, and you pick one of them.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yep, ready. Go for it.
Okay. Microsoft Teams or Slack?
Neither. I don't mind. That is just a communication tool.
In the office or remote?
Hybrid. I love the office. There is a completely different way of working. In an ideal world, I would spend 60% of my time working from home and 40% of my time working from the office.
I like how my instruction was pick one of the 2 options. And the first one you pick none, and the second one you pick a middle ground. And this is why we work with engineering, right? Because they come up with things you didn't think about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, right. You mentioned you've worked with desktop solutions as well. So do you prefer cloud products or desktop products?
You're going to hate me again. Actually, well, no, I'll pick one on this side and I will clarify a bit. Cloud. I think I'll choose cloud just because it reaches more people. However, and it's a challenge to work with. However, you have to realize that both on-premise and cloud were invented to solve a slightly different problem. So as long as you're using the right one to fix the right problem, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Maybe we'll get to another answer if you tell me what is the favorite product you've worked on.
So this goes to my first job. I wrote a controller for a robot that works in a factory. And it managed effectively the arrival and transfer of wafers through a machine. So wafer is in semiconductor industry, what you print your chips on. Before they're cut up, you have the wafers of a substrate that are completely flat and empty. And then they get etched with different chemicals in different layers, and you basically print the PCB on there. And then when they finish, they get cut up and embedded into chips, and you end up with a microprocessor and stuff like that. We saved 95% of operating time. It's one of the first major things that I saw the benefit of success and benefit of delivering something to the customer that they wanted.
That's a very cool example. I noticed that it's not one of the products we worked on together.
I've spent nearly 7 years now working at Anaplan. Yeah, you can't spend that much time working on something if you don't enjoy it, if you don't like solving problems there. The reason why I chose that one is because it was the first. But every job that I've done, I've had a moment where a customer has said thank you, or we achieved something that's taken a long time. They've come back and said, oh, you've saved us 30 hours of work a week. They're all close to my heart.
And when you see all the products out there, what is the product that you would have loved to help develop?
That's a tricky one, because I'm now at the stage where it's more the people. It almost doesn't matter. However, if I could choose an area, I would have liked to help build something that maybe left planet Earth, or that has helped people.
When you mentioned you were interested in physics, initially I thought, oh, maybe, putting something on the moon or on Mars now, it would be something very exciting to work on.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed working on the functionality. We solved mathematical and physical equations. That's kind of the scientist in me and the science fiction nerd in me. Actually, I'm probably reaching more people right now, and I'm really chuffed with that and proud of it. So
good. Even I am not respecting my own rules. I moved away from those 2 options, and now I'm going to have 3 options for you. Book, video, or podcast?
I love listening to podcasts in the evening when I'm relaxing. I do love watching videos during the evening if there's something nice to watch. I love historical stuff. I love science fiction. I read continuously. I'm reading 3 books at the moment. One of them is a technical book on Kubernetes. One of them is a kind of a self-improvement book on thinking fast and slow. The third book is science fiction. If I want a bit of escapism, I'll jump into a book. If I'm a bit too tired and I can't focus on a book, I'll watch a video or play a video game. And then in the evening, when I don't want a lot of visual input, I'll go for a podcast or music.
Cool.
So all of them.
Right. Yeah, I love your mix of books.
You've got to have a book for the right moment.
Thank you very much, Eddie, for your time. If you had just one thing that you want to share with product managers to help them work better with engineering teams, what would be your advice?
Communicate early and communicate with empathy and trust. I think those 3 are, if you're on the same side and you are working together, you can achieve anything.
That's a great advice. Thank you very much. If the listeners want to contact you, what should they do?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Edvard Dvorak, or you can send Magali an email to her podcast and she will forward it to me.
I'll put the link in the description of the podcast. Thank you again, Eddie, for your time. It was lovely to speak to you and get to know you as a person first, and also in your role as an engineer.
I enjoyed the chat. Have a good day, and I'll speak to you later.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that it has enabled you to understand your stakeholder and inspired you to better work with them to make successful products. If so, please share the link with your friends and colleagues. And if you want to suggest some topics, some guests, if you have questions you'd like me to ask during the interviews, or if you have any feedback, you can write to me at magalipellissier@hotmail.fr. Patricia Cadete is a storyteller by training and by heart. After some years as a TV journalist, she found a different path in the intersection of all things people, marketing, and communication. In the past years, Patricia has been working in fast-paced environments, advertising, marketing, fintech, where she has been fostering connections between people and brands across different time zones. Currently, she's a product operations manager at OutSystem, where she's leading an internal product management academy, helping to grow the next generation of product leaders. Patricia Cadete is a storyteller by training and by heart. After some years as a TV journalist, she found a different path in the intersection of all things people, marketing, and communication. In the past years, Patricia has been working in fast-paced environments, advertising, marketing, fintech, where she has been fostering connections between people and brands across different time zones. Currently, she's a product operations manager at OutSystems, where she's leading an internal product management academy, helping to grow the next generation of product leaders.